Netflix, if you look at them, they're actually looking at basically having like an ad supported plan because basically all these people um they think people are like sharing accounts and they're basically blaming customers for their downfalls, which is basically a huge mistake. You never want to blame your customer for your own shortcomings and stuff like that. That's like Blockbuster and why Blockbuster went out of business because they were blaming customers for basically wanting to watch content online and basically blaming customers for stealing DVDs and not returning them in time, and basically blaming customers for not paying late fees. Like you never want to blame your customers for your own shortcomings. But yeah, this ad supported plan basically, which would lower the price of basically a subscription. I don't think it's actually a good idea. I don't think people want to watch ads on Netflix. I think Netflix's one benefit is basically not having ads. Like that's why people watch Netflix instead of TV. People don't want to watch ads. People don't want to interrupt their program for ads. People's time is valuable, and they don't want to sit through TV. The little time that they have to watch an ad while they're watching a TV show.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you bring that up because Hulu currently does that, and no one really pays for like fucking Hulu with ads. Everyone just gets the ad-free version because it's just much better. But just to offer some more context into this whole situation, if you've been paying attention to the markets, I mean, really, unless you lived under a rock, over this past week, Netflix is down 36%, just based off of an atrocious earnings report that came out. Netflix posted their first subscriber loss in a decade. You even have an activist investor in Bill Ackman who sold off his entire position. The state of Canada, listen to me, I'm fucking going crazy here. The state of California even posted a $685 million loss to their portfolio. So they're taking some brunt of the hit here too. And like you just previously said, Reed Hastings, the founder and CEO of Netflix, he even went out and said that there's 100 million subscribers who are sharing accounts, and now Netflix is trying to go after that. Now, if you ask me, that's just penny pinching on Netflix's part. Obviously, sharing accounts is a big problem for most of these platforms, but really, my biggest point here, my biggest gripe with Netflix is that, truth be told, Netflix is completely overrated. There are way too competitors in such a formerly small space. Netflix has spent way too much money towards licensing rights, and now production companies who Netflix acquired these licensing rights from, I mean, they really attacked this a smart way. They played the long game. They let Netflix take the risk, and then once the model was proven, they jumped into that space, right? We saw Paramount do it. We saw AMC do it. Comcast, which is NBC, do that with Peacock. And then we saw Disney do the same thing as well. And then another gripe that I have with Netflix is that all the originals that they're putting out, they're not living up to the hype. All the super OG original shows on Netflix were fucking awesome, like Stranger Things, and some of these other shows were really good. But really, another point is that the library is constantly in a state of flux. I can't tell you how many times I've seen shows and movies removed, and all of a sudden they magically get added back like 5 months later. Like, how the fuck does that work? You're paying for the licensing rights for movies and shows. What are you getting it for like a week or two at a time? And then you're like, we'll add it back 5 months from now. Like, how the fuck does that work? I don't even understand it. It's ridiculous. So Netflix has no leverage. They're spending way too much on these shitty original shows and movies and docuseries, and they're paying all this money to all these people, and it's just like, who the fuck is going to watch your shitty show that isn't any good and no one has any interest in? You also have things that have sentimental value to people. So I'll give you a great example. Like Indiana Jones was on Netflix for a while, right? And then Universal, they got smart. Well, really, LucasArts was sold to Disney, but at the time when Universal did own LucasArts, they were just like, oh, Indiana Jones is on there? Okay. They like said, fuck it, let Netflix run with that. Let them have a field day. And then once Netflix showed that that model is sustainable, all these other businesses are like, fuck it, let's get in there. And they were so smart about it. They were quietly building up the infrastructure. Let Netflix test the water. If Netflix went out of business, do you think Disney would have cared? No, because guess what? They're not losing anything. They're licensing all their movies out to Netflix, and they're signing a contract with them to basically collect royalties for the next 5 years or 3 years. And then now all these contracts are expiring. These companies are being smart. They're building up their own platform and they're just saying, you know what? Fuck Netflix. We have our own IP. IP is everything in that space, especially in entertainment. IP is everything. For those of you who don't know and who aren't familiar, IP is just intellectual property. You need to create your own shit. But the problem is Netflix is just way overspending. They're doing way too much and they have a lot of debt, right? I mean, I think you know a little bit more about this than me, but I'm pretty sure they have just an insurmountable amount of debt. And at some point, they've got to pay it.
They're basically spending too much money on content creation each and every month. They're basically breaking even. They're gonna have to forever spend money on content creation because once people watch a show, they don't want to rewatch the show. It's basically a content game, and they're not doing anything with the intellectual property. They should be building theme parks, selling merchandise, etc., with the intellectual property. But going back to these like platforms and everything like that, how Disney, Paramount, and all these other companies are building different platforms, and Hulu, etc. The one benefit of these services was that it was cheaper than regular TV. And now, since you're getting this kind of like defranchised, decentralized kind of service with all these different things, it might even become more expensive than TV because you're gonna have to subscribe to all these different like subscriptions, and it basically gets rid of the benefit of buying Netflix. People bought Netflix, people bought Hulu, etc., because it was cheaper than TV, and they could basically get the same amount of entertainment for a cheaper price. Now, since everyone's taking their intellectual property back and putting it on different services, I think it loses a little bit of its benefit. I think they're actually giving TV a chance to get back into the game that they wouldn't have had otherwise.
Yeah, that's a really awesome point. Just all these companies just saying, fuck it, let's start our own streaming service. Let's get our own IP back. There definitely is some shenanigans going on there. But a lot of these companies, now what I'm seeing is like Disney, for instance, owns a stake in Hulu. They don't own Hulu outright. And then obviously they have Disney Plus in that umbrella and they have ESPN. So now what I'm seeing is like Disney has their own bundle and you're seeing that the Disney bundle is Disney Plus, ad-free Hulu, and then ESPN Plus, which ESPN Plus is pretty good. You could also watch live sports through Hulu, and I think also ESPN Plus. So like that's a huge thing. Like that's monumental. So you're seeing like a lot of these companies kind of collaborate, even in different spaces. Like you see, particularly Spotify has a deal with Hulu if you're a student subscriber where like you get discounted Hulu with it or something like that. So it's going to be interesting to see moving forward how these companies kind of like really what they do and if they decide to work together because like you said, it's getting to the point where regular cable is going to be basically the same price. But I think the one edge they have on regular cable is that it's ad free. So even if you spend the same amount of money like for all these streaming services as you would as cable, at least you're not really going to see any ads, right? I mean, isn't that kind of worth it because you're valuing your time more?
Well, I mean, Netflix was exploring a ad support program. I think once their growth stalls, once these platforms growth stalls, I think they're just gonna basically switch over to ads. I think there's no ads right now because they're in the growth stage of getting customers, and it's kind of like a value proposition that they have no ads. But the minute their growth stalls and their stock goes down a little bit, they're going to be running to basically supporting ads.
Well, that's what we saw this past quarter. Netflix, like I said, the first time in 10 years that they posted subscriber losses. So it really the growth is running out here. They're out of steam. They're losing subscribers. Like that's insane. And people thought this gravy train was never going to end with Netflix. It's just absolutely incredible. They seem to think that Netflix is just going to grow forever, and unfortunately, that's not how it works.